Ooh, little pitch drop at the end.
Butterscotch
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 172 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast, Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth, and I'm the Gaines programmer.
I'm Adam, and I'm the Refactoria Wanderer.
I'm Sam, and I make art.
Yeah, and this is a show where we talk about life, business, and working in the games industry. Today is Octopus Bait 2018.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
It's my favorite days of the year.
Yeah, it's weird that it comes after Octopus Gun, because you'd think you'd need the bait first.
Well, that's how they get you.
Okay.
You think you're safe because they've already got the gun. And then the bait comes. Yeah. And that's when you fall
It's
for
not
it.
bait for octopi. It's the octopi's baiting you.
Exactly.
Now they have guns.
Ah, right.
So watch out for that. I think the traditional octopus bait, it looks like a crate with a stick under it. Mm-hmm. And then there's a sign that just says, it's fine.
It's fine.
Although, given
get in here.
Given how much people like guns, could the gun also be the bait?
It could be just a gun with the tentacle still attached underneath that thing.
Yep.
And then you get too close.
You're like, free gun.
Game over.
There's a sign that says free gun. And you just see a little octopus tentacle holding it under the crate.
Uh-huh.
This is fine. Before we get started, we have a warning. Anything can happen on this show. There's going to be profanity, and we're going to talk about other stuff that children either, parents might think they shouldn't hear.
Like sentient octopi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or it's just going to be uninteresting to them because their brains, they only got half of them at the moment. It takes the rest of the time to get the other half.
Yeah, they're mostly just an empty skull right now.
Yeah. So on to the news. For starters, we'd like to thank our supporters over at moneygrab.bscotch.net. We have some anonymous supporters, so thank you for your sacrifice. And we also no glory in that whatsoever.
Such a beautiful thing. Really.
Yeah. And we also have several recurring supporters who are pledging monthly to support the podcast, and we appreciate that as well. On to the news studio. We have the Shenanicon coming up in 2 weekends.
And I must say, we're getting all the goodies in place for it. It's looking real good. You know what I'm saying?
Goody.
Yeah. Real good.
This is an event that's going to be in the evening of October 24 to 8 p.m. It's going to be hang out with the devs, meet some other Shenanites, other listeners, podcast players, developers. We're going to do a live podcast episode, and we're going to do a sneak demo, I guess.
Yeah, probably
not a preview, a sneak demo of Levelhead. And so you'll get to play the game long before anybody else, and we're going to be doing active development right up until the nanosecond.
Yeah, so it won't be, a super polished demo.
Oh, it's going to be just a total shit piece. It's not even going to work. And you get to peek right into the development process.
Yep. Covered in bugs.
Yeah. It's going to be crashing.
It's actually just an inexpensive way for us to do QA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or actually, it's a very expensive way for us to do QA. So this is the last week for tickets, and those tickets are $15, and there's also going to be food provided. So it's a pretty sweet deal. So check that out. It's over at meet.bscotch.net. All right. Now, Sam, you wanted to talk about Parkasaurus.
Yes. So I was on the industry news yesterday.
Yeah, the industry news.
Yep. And I saw the devs from Parkasaurus were talking about the game and about sort of what they've been up to. And I think it's just a very interesting case study. So what it is it's just two people who made this basically a Zoo Tycoon game, but it's sort of the classic Jurassic Park situation, right? So basically you have to go back in time. Not classic Jurassic Park, but similar idea. So you go back in time, you get dinosaur eggs, you bring them back, and then you make like a sweet amusement park for your people, right?
So you capture babies from the past.
Yes, you steal babies.
Wait a minute. When you steal a dinosaur from the past, is there
Don't
also
worry about chaos theory.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, is there a Back to the Future moment where like your spouse disappears because you stole their great grandpappy?
I think anything that happened before the asteroid hit, you're probably fine. It's like, that's such a big reset. That
unless you capture, the great ancestor of the dinosaur that would have solved the asteroid problem.
That's
true.
The sort of Einstein of
maybe that's why it happened, though.
Because of the going back in time thing.
Someone stole that.
That's true. We are living in the branch of the time tree.
Actually, yeah, maybe what happened on the original branch is that at the same time, there were people, but we were just these little shitty little things that were just barely scraping by in the land of dinosaurs that were all super intelligent. But then some rogue human scientists, just like in the Terminator, went back in time to kill the one that prevented
Sarah Connor.
Exactly.
There was a Sarah Connor situation.
Yeah. The Sarah Connor dinosaur.
Compsognathus.
But anyways, so in Parkosaurus, you go back in time, you grab an egg, you bring it forward, and then you build this cool park. And so, but the difference is that Jurassic Park has like a very realistic, very gritty kind of aesthetic. This is very cartoonish and hilarious. And so the like Triceratops and stuff all have these huge eyeballs, kind of almost like googly eyes, right? And so everything just looks very cute. The aesthetic's very simple and fun. And it was really interesting, I think, as far as like a general case study goes, because, we talk a lot about not launching around the same time as AAA games. Well, Jurassic Park World launched a Zoo Tycoon sort of game.
Oh, no.
Just recently, like apparently a month or two ago.
I think that was more like 6 months ago.
Yeah. So a while ago. And, but interestingly, of course, these indie guys are doing just fine.
Yeah.
Because
they didn't launch. I think when they say don't launch at the same time, they mean like literally the same week.
The same moment.
Right.
When you're competing for feature spots.
Yeah. Because if they launched the same week as Jurassic Park
Tycoon,
they would have, at least the news side, they would have been drowned out, right? But if it's a different enough game, which it sounds like it is, and also the Jurassic Park game was kind of middlingly received.
Yeah.
Because there were aspects of it that were super fun, and it felt really good, but my understanding was it didn't feel... it felt too constrained in some way or something on average. Sure. So I think people were still what it did is actually by launching afterwards is Jurassic Park, that game created the niche.
Probably primed the audience.
Exactly. And people wanted more. They wanted something like
they were like, I see where this could go, but I don't like where it went.
Right. So then when this game came out, then it was basically
well, so they're in early access right now, actually. They're not even fully launched yet.
Yeah.
But they're already, like, according to their reviews, they're doing pretty well. It's come out, I think, a couple weeks ago. And so it's just really interesting to see sort of that pairing of, you very rarely get that opportunity to see a AAA game that is basically the same game actually as a indie game. And then basically with the graphics change and then sort of, general design changes and stuff. But seeing those launch within sort of even a 6-month window and then seeing them both do fine.
I think there's an interesting question there too, which is
better would it done.
What studio made the Jurassic Park game? Do you know?
No idea.
Yeah, because that's the thing.
Yeah,
because it may be a big budget game, but it may not actually be. And it's a big budget game on a popular franchise, but it's not part of a gaming franchise. It's not like a Call of Duty game or that kind of thing. So I think those kinds of things are. It's just like when a video game gets made into a movie.
Tends to not translate.
Pretty hit or miss. And maybe if you go the other way, sometimes it doesn't pan out either. Because I know, like, for example, Lego Star Wars, amazing.
So fun.
But the Lego games themselves really just have a lot of legs to stand on. Like, they're just a very good set of games. So there's like the Lego Harry Potter and that kind of stuff.
Well, they have their own style, right? They have their own brand and style that's actually completely distinct from their toys.
Yeah. And so if and if you're going to make a game that's trying to be completely faithful to the source material of the movie, then oftentimes that puts weird constraints on the design that you can't have as much fun with it as you could when you're totally off on your own making weird googly-eyed dinosaurs and going back in time and stealing eggs and stuff. Because you can come up with anything that sounds fun, make mechanics that work, and you don't need to ask anybody's permission for that IP. So very interesting. On to life news and world news. I went to New York City this past weekend.
Yes, the Big Apple.
Went to the Apple.
How was it?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
I enjoyed almost everything about the city. So we'll talk about
a wild place.
We'll talk about the good, and then we'll talk about the not as good. So I think I'm from the Midwest, and I've met a lot of people from New York.
And you've never been before, right?
Never been to New York City. And there's one question that I always get from people from New York City, which is they go, "What do you even do there?" when they hear that I'm from Iowa or St. Louis or whatever. And I thought this was kind of sinking in as I was talking to people in New York City, because the things that they're describing of what they do there is literally no different. So they go to bars, they go to restaurants, they go to nightclubs, they go to plays, they go see movies, they go hang out with friends. These are activities that are available in literally every city in the whole world, But So I didn't want to like burst anybody's bubble. So I was just like, oh, that's amazing. As people were telling me all these things that they could go do, because they were so excited about it that I thought I'll just let them have it.
Sure, yeah. Let them go.
But what I was kind of wondering about was like, why would you think that somehow no other place would have these things?
Mm-hmm.
And so as I was kind of like touring the city and seeing all the things, I was like, I started to understand, I feel like, because everywhere you go in New York City, you see things that are present in pop culture all over the place. So like in the Avengers movie, where was the big battle? It was the battle for New York, right? And Cloverfield, the Statue of Liberty's head goes flying and crashing into an apartment, right? Ghostbusters, they fill the Statue of Liberty up with goo, and then bleh, or like the Marshmallow Man, like stamps through this New York, like downtown New York City. Seinfeld, New York, right?
A lot of things.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine, like right there.
30 Rock,
yeah. And I feel like it would make sense that if you live there, since so much of American pop culture just kind of like orbits the cultural gravity well of New York City, that you would start to wonder, like, is there really anything else? Like, this is everything just kind of keeps pointing back where I am, And so it would make sense to kind of think that the rest of the country is just kind of
there must be a reason for that.
Yeah, the rest of the country is just this desolate wasteland of tumbleweeds and sad people standing around staring at blank walls with literally nothing to do, So that was kind of like I would hold that against people when they would say, like, what do you even do there? Because I would think, how could you possibly ask that?
What does it even mean?
What do you mean by that? But I think I get it now. Just because it's an exposure problem.
Sure, because they're so looped back onto themselves, basically.
Yeah, everything. Works. If everything points back where you are, then you start to wonder, why would that be?
Yeah, exactly. You would assume that there's some reason for that besides just historical happenstance, right? And positive feedback loops. But you would think there must be a reason that everybody like talks about New York incessantly, and why this sort of represents the United States somehow as a whole, and so on, right?
And as you travel around New York City, I feel like it was just that whole idea of like, it's an important place with a capital I, with important things happen here, good and bad, and important people are here, good and bad. Important, everything's important. It's historically important. It's important, and I get like it is totally right. As I'm checking out, Statue of Liberty, Ellis Island, where 16 million immigrants came through for like a 80-year period. Of course, I went to the 9/11 memorial, which was very emotionally charged, and like that's a whole like that changed the course of everything, in the whole world. And so there's all these, and then like go down to Wall Street. There's the bull there, and like this is the financial center of the U.S.
It is all there,
and it's all like within a mile,
right?
It's all hyper concentrated into this really small space, and so I feel like I get it. As you're walking around that city and you just keep stumbling across these incredible historic things that are either historically relevant or still relevant today. You can't help but just kind of feel like by being there that you are also part of it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask about. It's like, did you find that the sort of general charge of the city sort of rubbed on you in a good way? Because when I was there, the energy does feel weirdly high.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is like, everybody I sort of was able to chat with, they were just so pumped to be a part of this thing, and I felt like this is a great city,
right?
In a way that I haven't really experienced in other cities, where everybody there is just they just want to be around it. Like that's the whole thing. It's just the city itself is the thing that everybody has the vision of being a part of. So I mean, it was a very different experience than I've been to a lot of cities, and this was just a whole other thing. Yeah. So that was pretty amazing.
Interesting.
And then what happened on the flip side in terms of not so great experiences was, I think this this whole idea of like, I want to be part of this important thing. I want to feel like I'm like I matter and I'm important as well. Potentially manifests itself in unusual ways. So for example, I stayed at an Airbnb, and from about 2:00 in the morning till 6:00 in the morning, every single night that I was there, so for 3 nights in a row, there were at least 50 people partying on the street right outside the apartment, and their party mostly involved them yelling, not like yelling words, but just yelling. And then they had their cars parked in a row, and they would just alternate honking at each other with their parked cars. And then on the final night, one of them brought an amplifier, and then they started playing sounds that sound like a kid's laser gun. It's just like beep, 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 or like a crazy car alarm sound. And so they did that for 4 hours from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. And there had to have been at least, 500 apartments lining this street. It's like a lot of people are living here trying to sleep. And this was their activity overnight. But that I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but I kind of felt like it was look, I exist. Like that was the whole point of that activity.
Well, it's hard to see any other point for that particular activity.
Yeah. But it's the same as like you see graffiti on a wall, and it's like, why would somebody do that? Kind of deep down. Like, or why would somebody like blast information out on Twitter about like personal information about the salad that they're eating? It's all part of the same thing, which is like people want to matter. They want the world to know that they're there.
Put your mark on stuff.
Yeah. And so, sure, you bring an amplifier and a noisemaker and you sit outside for 4 hours and scream and make noise because there's 500 people out there who at the very least are going to be mad, but they will know that you were there.
Yeah, I don't know. The logic on that one's just off.
It's real loose.
But the whole time that was happening, I was thinking, are these lawyers? Are they accountants? Are they waiters? Who are these
What do
people?
they do?
What do they
do?
I've never met a person whose pastime is, from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. or 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. I just go scream outside of people's living space.
Well, they have a group too. That's the confusion.
It was a big activity.
Yeah, if it was one person, you'd be like, whatever, But yeah, a group of people, that's a coordinated effort at that point.
They're really going for it.
So
and
what's the deal?
And then at some point, these people all dissipate and they're out there again.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like when somebody leaves a troll comment on YouTube and you're like, but where are they?
Mm-hmm.
Where are these people out in the real world? What are they doing?
How do they live with themselves?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I didn't sleep. I'm very tired, but it was. So I mean, overall, it was an incredible experience.
It is an interesting thing that whole idea of getting importance via proximity, where
by living in an important place.
Yeah, where people get pride in things that they have nothing to do with, because there's like whole like pride in country. Like I'm so proud that my country like defeated this other one in war. It's like, well, did you?
What happened to sports too?
And it's sports.
Yeah, there's tons of
sports fans proud to be an American. That's a common phrase. It's like to be like, what did you do though?
You just are right.
You're just in it.
But then the closer that you get to it, the more, even if you don't actually directly participate, then somehow the more true that becomes, the more of your self identity kind of gets wrapped up in it. Because I that's a lot of the sense that I've gotten with people from cities that have like this really big, world renowned.
This gravitas.
This gravitas is because most of the people in those cities aren't doing anything different than anybody in any other place.
Right. Doing normal things.
They're just living their lives, doing normal stuff.
It would be impossible for everyone in the city to be doing really, really
important things are happening. So almost every single person in all these cities is just living their normal lives, having no impact on that city the way that people think about the reason that city is important.
Like there's only one mayor.
There's one mayor,
and that kind of
there's
stuff.
There's one, The Daily Show, right? There's just a handful of people that are actually doing all this stuff.
That are sort of actively moving that
cultural weight.
Yeah, the cultural weight of the city.
But then somehow just by being there, you're like, this is mine.
Mm-hmm.
I did this, know? I find it very strange that's
I mean, this is why I personally have a hard time getting behind active sports watching.
Yeah, because I'm like, why would I care who wins?
Yeah, because people fans of one team will talk shit about fans of another team. I'm like, but you could just choose to switch. You could stop at any point.
But I think it's the important thing is that because giving you that thing to attach yourself to, it gives you this other identity point as it's just like another sort of
it's importance by proxy.
Yeah, right? It's important, but I mean it's another point in sort of your buildup of like what you are as a person, right? Because people basically exist relative to other things.
Yes,
it's sort of the general understanding of how you work as a person.
And people often define themselves by what they aren't, by some other that they can identify.
Yeah,
I guess we should be thankful that people are doing things like sports teams because that's sort of one of the least harmful ways to categorize yourself.
So it does tend to cause a lot of damage when sports events happen.
It does cause a lot of property damage.
Yeah,
on occasion.
But I guess that is still better than all out, civil unrest.
Yeah.
So I guess there's that. Which actually reminds
we got to channel it.
Yeah. This weekend I spent basically the entire weekend reading The Three Body Problem, which is a sci-fi series that recently, I don't know if recently I became very aware of it, so I don't know if it is a recent thing. I didn't pay much attention, but it's really good. It's by a Chinese author and it's been translated. I'm reading the English translation of it, and it's all about basically how with humanity, because it's basically humanity faces an existential threat of an alien race, right? And the entire series is basically about, I think, a pretty realistic view about how people would handle that, and sort of the summary of it, I guess, is that despite the fact that humans they're just kind of fucked anyway. If some like higher force existed, most of the reason they were fucked in particular is because of themselves, and it's just that repeated over and over again.
Can't help but sabotage
they just
themselves.
Can't help but make it worse, over and over and over again. And every time that this thing happened, like, it felt very insightful as a way of looking at all of this, but it had little pieces of all of this. Like, people can't help but attach themselves to ideas for no fucking reason. They can't help but attach themselves just because they need something
to attach to.
And so it's a really interesting dive into that, which is pretty fun.
Yeah, I've been reading The Expanse, and that's the same same story. It's there's this sort of potentially like solar system ending thing happening, but most of what people are trying to do is figure out like it's probably going to be fine. So instead, I'm gonna make a power grab and try to take over this space station or like do this other thing. People, man, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? All right, so then Sam. You had one of those weekends.
I've had, it's just been odd. So, first I was celebrating my 2-year anniversary, which was awesome. So, Diane and I ran around the city, and I got to say, we've seen those scooters outside.
There are more.
There's tons of them. We took to the scoots on Saturday.
You scooted?
We scooted. It was so fucking fun. It was unbelievable because it's like $1. It's like $1 to get started. So we got them in Central West End.
Is there an app or something that you use?
Yeah, so you just get an app, you take a picture, and it unlocks. I have no idea how it's like fucking magic. So the scooter unlocks, and then you just
is it timed? How do you?
No, it just charges you based on how far you went.
Oh.
That's it. So
it's a scuba.
Yeah, and
it's not time based. It's distance based,
and they are electrically powered. So. Basically, once you sort of kick off, then there's a throttle, and it like it really kicks in, and you go. And so we took them through Forest Park, which is just gigantic green
place
space
to do it.
Yeah. So we were in Central West End, ate some food, hopped on a scooter, went across the entire park, which took like 15 minutes. We're going like 16 miles an hour. We're in the bike lane, like we were just blazing it. But the best part was, bikers are passing us, but of course they're working super hard. We're just standing there and just sort of like billowing in the wind, and it was a gorgeous day. And so we drive across the park, and then we go to get ice cream on the other side of the park. Dinah's scooter dies as
I was wondering about
approaching.
that.
Yeah, so
when that happens,
we didn't really check. We didn't know how it works. We didn't check the battery life on both of them. So hers was sort of petering out as we got to the end. But it was so fun.
So
fun.
Your scooter dies.
Then what?
Then what happens?
You just leave it. You just put it somewhere.
But how does it get recharged?
Do they have some other like battery powered tracking thing on there that has a backup?
Yeah, so they're tracking the battery of it, like via the app thing too. And then there's a whole nother program, like the other side of it is that if you want to earn money,
you can go
go pick up the scooters and put them at recharge stations.
Oh, so then you can like put credits back into your Scoot account.
And if you
these kinds of things are so crazy,
so cool.
It's brilliant.
If you scoot to a one of these charging stations, I believe the ride is free. So if you bring your scooter back to one of these hubs, then
but somebody just realized exactly this. They're like, okay, we want to put a fleet of scooters out, but people are just going to fucking leave them everywhere. And they're like, okay, well, cool. What if we just also pay people to pick them back up, and then we just make sure that there's a little bit left over for us, and then all they had to do was deploy an app, right? They just put an app on the App Store, and then they just go dump a truckload of scooters out anywhere, and then they just walk away.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. So we were talking about it a little bit because then the scooter died, so we go eat ice cream, and then we call an Uber because now we're trapped on the other side of the city. And then I was like, what the fuck is happening? So now I'm in a stranger's car. I just scooted on some stranger's scooter across the city, going
left
back.
One of them.
We just
left both of them.
Yeah, left both of them on the side of the road. Like,
some rando at some point's going to go scoop them up.
Yeah, someone's getting
just like picking up after you.
It was just so odd. The whole thing. I was like, we're living in the future, But anyway, so that was the fun part of the weekend. But the bad part was that on Thursday night, yes, I believe Thursday night, I was flossing. I felt like I had like a popcorn kernel in my tooth. And so I was getting all up in there with the floss, trying to get it out. Couldn't seem to get it out. And I was like, what the hell? So I was like, I'll just go in one more time, see if I can get it. So get in there and really give it a good, good yank pop thing, try to get that out. And then something hard comes out, like in big. And I spit it out. And I was looking at it. And it just took me a while. And I was like, that's a part of my fucking tooth. And so Diana's standing right there. She looks at me.
There's no way. There's no way that could have been wedged in between your teeth.
Yeah.
It had to be your tooth.
And then I'm bleeding from the mouth because I have literally ripped part of my tooth off. And
with floss.
With floss.
That's something.
They don't warn you about that at the dentist. Tell you that.
No.
Like, have you been flossing because you have too many teeth?
I told my wife about this on Friday, and she was like, "What?" And then she was like, "That would only happen to Sam."
Well, this is more likely that
exactly.
because I fractured my tooth a long time ago. I think it was around the time I started doing CrossFit, where I was lifting a lot of heavy weight, and I was clenching my teeth, and I got this hairline fracture in one of my teeth, but I didn't feel anything. Until maybe a week later, I was eating some like hard crust bread. There's some bread that just the crust is real fucking hard, and a searing pain shot into my mouth. I was like, "Ow!" I was like, "I'll just chew on the other side." So I chewed on the other side, and then it was fine. And then the next time I ate hard crust bread, same thing. Because apparently these don't heal; they just you get that split fracture, and that's just it now.
It's just your tooth now.
It's just done now. So I think I had that fracture for maybe a month. And then finally I called the dentist. I was like, yeah, every time I eat this hard bread, this tooth hurt. And they're like, oh yeah, it's probably fractured. But yeah, so I think what can happen is you'll get these little tiny fractures from something, maybe clenching your teeth or something, but that you don't feel at the time. There's nothing visible happening. And then something else happens, like you're flossing, and then your tooth just explodes.
Despite eating a tremendous amount of candy all the time, I don't know if our genetics. Do you guys have many cavities?
I brush my teeth.
I have had one. Yeah, I brush my teeth a lot, but I've only had one cavity.
Right.
My whole life.
We don't really get cavities very much, despite the fact that we've just been swimming in sugar for most of our days. So
we're also swimming in coffee, and I think we drink our coffee without sugar. So I think just the sheer acid just like melts all the bacteria.
Whatever we're doing is working out in terms of mouth health. But
in the short term,
so I'd only actually had one cavity ever, and that was I got like a little filling for it, and that was on that tooth. So I went to the dentist, and they were looking at it, and they're like, okay, so they think what happened was that filling basically got fractured in some way, and then what I caught was the edge of the filling poking out. And then when I you just snapped it out, I also ripped out part of my tooth with it.
So this is why flossing is dangerous.
It is very dangerous. So now I have to go in this morning and get a fucking 2-hour operation to get a crown put on my tooth. Then I got to go back in 2 weeks and do it again to finish it out.
So they're going to put a temporary crown on this time, which sucks.
Because it's like all weird shaped.
It's shaped. Yeah. When I had my temporary crown for this fractured tooth, it was more like a weird plastic peg. It was like rough. Great. It was like rough. And whenever I chewed stuff on that side, it would put pressure on it. It did not feel good. But it was just like there's clearly something that's not supposed to be there.
Something be going on smoothies, I think. Probably. But so this was incident number 1. So later on, then I go to open the back door in the house. So my tooth has already exploded. Did the dentist thing,
and then it turned out your other tooth was tied to the doorknob.
No. But I go to
like a nightmare.
I go to unlock the back door to let the dog out, and the lock is like it's not working now. So it's just really sticky, and you gotta almost just like punch it to get it to fucking open. Okay,
so you did, and another tooth fell.
So you grabbed your floss, and you're like, I know how to get this door open.
So the lock's broken, and then I'm driving, and in my car, I hit the left turning signal because I actually used my turning signal.
Oh wait, so what happened with the lock? You just couldn't get it?
It's just kind of broken.
I thought you were going to say you were so enraged from the tooth thing that you just yanked the lock and
I've been
snapped
trying
it.
Not to do step function energy. It just seemed like it's a bad move.
So you get in the car and your left blinker won't work. So then you karate chop it.
Yeah. So it doesn't work. So my left blinker's out also.
So you get out your floss and you're like, I'm going to fix this blinker.
Everything's just shattering around me.
Then you got to go get a blinker crown.
Yep.
And that's a whole thing.
I can drill around it, put this weird plastic peg on it.
You got to go to the car dentist.
People always tell me that I should floss. I literally never floss. like ever.
That's my favorite.
But the only reason that my dentist can tell is because of how much my gums bleed when they stab me with floss and sharp implements. And I'm like, if the only reason for me to floss is so that when you stab me,
I bleed.
I bleed less. That seems like a crazy reason to do that.
It is a little wild.
My dentist would say, your gums are supposed to be like hair. You know, when you get a haircut, you're not supposed to bleed. And I'm like, so when I get my gums cut, I'm not supposed to bleed? I don't think that's something I can control.
That's a horrible metaphor also. Who chose that?
My dentist. Maybe I should go to a different dentist. Anyways, okay.
That would be funny if Sam goes back with this new crown. And it's like, it's an awesome crown. And it was just you with your weird dentist who says weird things that gave you this plastic crown.
It probably is.
Well, I asked him about, because it takes him like a week to get the new tooth in. The one that's supposed to fit your mouth appropriately. But these are the ones that used to be gold and silver.
Yeah.
And now they're just, she's like, yeah, so here's what it looks like. It's, you know, it looks exactly like a tooth. And I was like, what if I don't want that? What if I want a silver tooth?
Is it like a back molar?
Yeah, it's a back molar. But I don't think I'm going to get it because it probably costs more.
A lot more expensive. Yeah. Yeah, they're ceramic now, I think.
It looked, I don't know what the hell it was. It looked like a tooth. It's kind of creepy.
It looks like a tooth. If it's stronger than your normal teeth, you can be like, you know, while you're in there, just hit all of them.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know why I got these crappy breakable teeth.
Yeah.
Give me some
They
inventive
have
teeth.
like cold sensitivity and stuff.
Well, does it ever weird you guys out? Because they're bones. They are exposed bones that you use to mash.
You know what's even weirder?
I hate
Elephant tusks are just teeth.
Yeah.
And narwhal horns are teeth that grow through the tops of their own heads.
That's also true.
What about bull
But it's also,
horns?
it's just their left tooth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes they have both. Sometimes they have double
Every once in a while,
horns. Yeah.
And sometimes it's the right tooth on some weird.
I don't know about bull horns, but rhino horns are just hair.
Yeah.
Bull horns must just be hair then too.
Probably just hair.
I think bull horns are actual horns. But it is kind of weird, though, that for some reason bulls don't have to have teeth growing out of their heads, but everything else
Yeah, how come they figured it out?
kind of seems unfair.
That's where that term bullheaded comes from, because they were stubborn enough to be like, no,
I'm not going to use my teeth.
I'm not going to grow teeth through the top of my head like a weirdo. I'm going to find another way.
What am I, a narwhal?
Yeah. Being so bullheaded. All right, let's get on to some questions. These questions come from our listeners over at podcast.bscotch.net. If you'd like to get a question on a future episode, go over there and then do the questions box thing. First question comes from imcade. Do you guys actually drink coffee when you record your podcast?
I'm doing it right now.
Yeah, I just finished mine.
Yeah.
There's your answer.
There's your answer.
Yeah.
It's usually because it's in the morning now. So yeah, definitely.
So that it doesn't interrupt my vocalizations, I like to do a thing where I just have like an IV bag of coffee above my head. It drips onto my bald scalp.
It just
runs down the creases of my face and trickles into the corner of my
completely
mouth.
misses your mouth.
Yeah. But I kind of get the aroma of it.
Yep.
You know,
you could just get rid of those Camelback, backpack water.
it seems like a lot of work. I'll stick with my IV bag dripping on my face.
You do you.
Technique. You ever feel like the smell of coffee is just so much better than most other things about coffee? Like you open up a bag of coffee beans, you're just like, oh yeah, and then you drink it, and it's just kind of like bitter acid.
Yep. That's why the ice cream's so good, because the ice cream is just the smell of coffee somehow in taste form.
But which is with sugar and milk, though.
Well, yeah, it's ice cream, so it's delicious.
That's true. Now, here's another question about coffee that I have.
What you got?
While we're exploring.
Yeah, sure. Let's go.
So, acid is sour.
Yep.
Is it always sour?
I mean, unless it melts your tongue off.
That's really sour. That's too sour.
Right. So think about like those warheads that you ate growing up and burned a hole in your tongue.
They were very sour.
They're so sour because you're burning a hole in your tongue. You know.
What are bases?
Bases, I don't think actually.
Are they also sour?
No, because acid adds extra hydrogens into water. Mm-hmm. So
this is why lemons are so sour.
Yeah. So basically, what you're tasting is like that, just the extra hydrogen concentration. So you're basically tasting the acid level. But I don't think there is actually a taste for when things get more basic.
So coffee is acidic. Mm-hmm. Why is it bitter?
Because it also has lots of other stuff in it. So basically,
so it's bitter, not just a pile of acid.
Bitter is the more complex, interesting one, because you have a whole bunch of different kinds of taste receptors, right? But when it comes to things like sour, you basically only got one, because it's just like how many hydrogen ions are in there. That's pretty straightforward. You don't need more than one kind of thing to detect that. But when it comes to bitter is basically a way to detect organic compounds of various sorts. Organic meaning, lots of carbons and oxygens and hydrogens all shoved together in some interesting way, because that's basically all the cool things that do stuff biologically are these complex molecules. And so we, of course, need to be able to eat food that won't kill us. And so
Step one.
So that's
usually the first step.
But the way that we have to do that,
successful life.
Yeah, so it's of course very easy for us now because we have this whole system in place where you go to the grocery store and we know that none of that will kill us, right? But before those times when we mostly had to go out and eat plants, you had to somehow know when you started to eat a plant if it was going to kill you.
So before you swallow it.
Before you swallow it, ideally. And so bitter taste is kind of the main mechanism to do that, because most things that have biological activity are, again, these complex compounds, and we've evolved to be able to identify certain kinds of patterns in those molecules that are toxic. So when you taste bitter, that's basically an evolutionary mechanism to identify that something is probably poison. This is why medicines are universally bitter, right? Because they're actual poisons. But in low doses,
this is why dogs won't eat them when you try to give them their pills.
Because they taste horrible.
No,
because they just assume it's going to be poison, from like a deep evolution.
And they're not wrong.
Right? And they're not wrong. Yeah. But this is, it's not to say that all. And
what
it's not
about
at all
Brussels
the case.
sprouts?
Well, exactly,
Adam?
because it's not at all the case that all bitter things are actually toxic.
Okay,
not even close. It's just that
the correlation's high enough.
The correlation is high enough that it on an evolutionary timescale, if you just avoided bitter things, you were more likely to not die, right?
And if you sought out sweet things, you're good.
Yeah, you were more likely to not die also.
Because that's mangoes.
Yep.
And that's how you live.
They're so good.
That's how you live.
So good.
Yeah. And so now we have all these complex different bitter tastes, but it's interesting because we now seek out bitter things that we have to grow accustomed to them. This is why basically, anything with any bitter taste whatsoever, people hate unless they've adapted to it. Because that's we have an evolutionary drive to hate it.
That's what the acquired taste is.
Exactly.
You acquire tastes by just
But that's interesting,
by
right?
getting over your exposure.
Getting over your animal self.
Yeah, by getting over your evolution. So would you say that someone who doesn't like the taste
just an animal
of, broccoli, spinach, coffee,
you're just an animal still. You gotta put mind over animal and ascend to a higher plane.
And then you get the reward of eating broccoli.
To be fair, those things are delicious.
They are delicious.
After you
get over how bad they taste and learn to like it.
Yeah, you get into that.
Then you're like, this
plane.
is great.
It is. It's fantastic. I fucking love.
Coffee's the same way, right?
Yep.
Back to we looped it back to coffee. We're good.
Perfect.
Question done. Next question. Map5597 asks, how would you feel about a community created Crashlands Creator?
Go ahead. Good luck.
Yeah, I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
Yeah, I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
After Adam actually built it and we saw what pieces of his soul and mind had to be sacrificed at the altar to make that thing.
But really, building it wasn't even, it was a lot of hard work, right? But the main thing is managing people's use of it. And so the nice thing about the community is they don't have to answer to anybody, right? Mm-hmm. They can be a whole, but I'm not saying the community is a whole bunch of shit faces, but they could be, and it would be fine because what's anybody going to do about it, right? And who's some people could be angry at them, but it's not official. It doesn't feel like it's a real problem. So this is I think this is why modding.
What do you mean by that? What would they do?
As in, because if somebody did make a tool to let
basically
people
like a Steam Workshop style,
a Steam Workshop style thing, then all of a sudden the universe would be flooded with people saying horrible things and Crashlands campaigns, right?
Okay,
and painting swastikas on the ground and doing all kinds of stuff, right? This would be the world that you would have created.
Okay,
so but we didn't do that, so it's not our fault.
Right. Somebody else made the creator.
Somebody else made it, and it's now it's got this loose ownership on it, and so it's kind of no one's fault.
This is kind of where modding comes from.
Right.
People want to do whatever they want to do in their game, and that's fine as long as they keep it contained,
keep it to yourself,
into their own version of Skyrim.
You keep it kind of isolated away from the official thing, right?
Yeah.
Because then again, it's now the only people who need to be held accountable are the people who did the bad thing. Versus if you're the one who provides the tool and you do it in an official capacity, then you are now also culpable. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's kind of where I'm like, if you do it, that's awesome.
Fine.
There's going to be some horrible stuff in there, but it won't really be your fault because you definitely don't have the resources to manage that. It's not our fault anymore because we didn't do it in the first place. Mm-hmm. And so it's only those people's fault.
There's also the added question of the cross-platform nature of things.
Yeah.
Which is you make your creator and it works on Steam, right? But then we patch the game and like basically we have something like 12 different versions of Crashlands now across all the different platforms. And they're all up to date, but they also have very slight differences between them, which are kind of platform specific or platform dependent. And so you may make a campaign that plays perfectly well on PC, but then you flip over to the mobile version or something. And for some reason that you can't discern, because you don't also have the code base of the game, there's some aspect of that campaign that won't work.
But also how you're going to get it, because the only platform you'll be able to reliably get it on is PC.
Right. Because we know Apple has some pretty strict guidelines on user-generated content.
Well, even just in general, because it had to be delivered over the internet. And so you have to be able to deliver it somehow
to the
in a way that the game can access, which means that we would have to build a repository for you. And now it's our fault again. And so now we have to be responsible for everything.
It keeps coming back on us.
Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah, I think it's I think we could do it if it was just on Steam and it was just a Steam Workshop thing, and we just said like, if you put things in this folder, they will just appear in the game, and that's fine. You know, we could do something like that. The question is just, is that good? I don't know. Is it?
I don't know.
I think it can be. I mean, certainly the mods have been something that gave something like Skyrim a decade long life cycle. Yep. So it's cool to be able to turn things over to the community, but I think it's mainly just that question of the realities of management on top of that.
Yeah,
which is that we're not big enough to be able to support even a modding community, I would think, at this point.
Yeah, well, because it introduces these other problems besides just people just being butts, which is definitely a problem. But there's an actual that doesn't actually become a legal problem for us. It just becomes an ethical problem, right? So, which means that a person could choose not to deal with an ethical problem, right? But there's a legal problem which comes down to infringement issues. Because now if somebody makes, the Zelda mod for Crashlands,
where does that leave us?
Where does that leave us?
Who gets a takedown in that case?
Yeah, because now Steam is delivering it. Yeah, but it's being played in our game. And
I believe this would probably fall under a DMCA situation, kind of like how somebody can take copyrighted content, upload it onto YouTube, and now it's the responsibility of the platform to take things down that get flagged.
Right.
So we're operating as a platform in that scenario, and so if somebody makes one of those mods and it gets reported, then we have to take it down.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then, then do we have to do that, or does Steam do that? So
but then there's also interesting problems where I've seen. Have you guys seen that really, really shitty video of somebody drawing a Sonic the Hedgehog in MS Paint, and it's like really messed up, and there's like horrible distorted screeching version of the Green Hill Zone music playing?
No, I've not seen that.
So somebody drew this garbage Sonic that I think it's referred to as Sanic, S-A-N-I-C, and then somebody took that hideous version of Sonic and made that into a character that you could play in Skyrim,
of course,
with a mod, and so you can run super fast, but like your body is all like noodly and bendy and stuff. And while you're playing that character, this horrible screeching music from Green Hill Zone is playing, and so then there's this question of like, well, I mean, that's a parody,
yeah,
but
things are only fair use if a judge says they
exactly.
Are. So
Sony
could still go after you first before it turns out it's okay.
Yeah, so there's these kinds of weird gray areas that as soon as you get into that territory, you just have to start dealing with.
Yeah. Well, that's why the nice thing about Levelhead is that since we're baking all that in from the start, you can't do something like make Sanic, but you can make your own levels, which should be a nice happy middle ground between all this stuff. Controlled chaos.
Yes.
And you could, I think, because you can, in Levelhead, you'd be able to basically make almost an exact duplicate of levels from all kinds of other platformers. Yeah. But because everything about it is like the mechanics are going to be definitely different, at least to some degree, and the art's definitely different. There's enough, and the character's definitely different. There's enough things that are different that it would be somebody could still always sue us.
Well, yeah, but it would be, design isn't copyrightable.
Yeah, but design isn't copyrightable. Yeah. So as long as it would have to look way, way more like the actual thing. So by us choosing a completely different art style that nothing else has, then we still get to have a creative platform where we know people will basically just remake stuff that already exists, but we won't be culpable when that happens.
Yeah. Yes. So if the community wants to make a Crashlands Creator, go for it. But we are keeping our hands off of it. Next question comes from Dageki. What do you, quote, know I like that.
Yep. That's good.
What do you know about polyphasic sleep? Have you tried it? If not, would you? If so, how did it go? And did you stop?
What was this Sam's thing?
That was a poor choice.
All
I
right.
did it.
What is polyphasic sleep?
Polyphasic sleep is where instead of sleeping for 8 hours a night in one gigantic chunk, because the reality is that you need the 2 4-hour full cycles through sleep in order to feel good, that you break up that 8 hours into some arrangement that is not an 8-hour chunk.
Some
So-
suboptimal garbage
So
arrangement.
a lot of people try this one called, I think it's one called the Everyman, which is like a 5-hour core sleep and then 2 hours, like 2 naps during the day or something like that. And then there's basically more and more versions where you keep on splitting it up more and more. So I did try the craziest version of it, which is called the Uberman, which is where you sleep for 20 minutes every 4 hours only.
Just always,
Yeah.
all the time. Every 4 hours, full stop. For the rest of your life, every 4
This is
hours,
what
you
you
take
do.
a 20-minute
Your
nap.
life is governed by a clock, but this is
So-
definitely better than sleeping 8 hours a night.
Well, supposedly it was
But
not.
I just
in
think it's
practice.
hilarious that even in principle, somebody could think it would be better. They're like, yeah, it's way better to every 4 hours
Well,
on the hour.
No, so because
Go to sleep for 20 minutes.
because the idea is that you end up getting like an extra 6 hours out of a day.
Yeah,
because
but-
a crazy amount. of
But
extra.
at the cost of every 4 hours on the hour going to sleep for 20
Yes.
minutes, no matter what.
Yeah,
it is.
let's
So-
talk about the. Let's
That
talk
is
about
completely
the.
We'll
insane.
get there. So I did it in college because that was
Because
we
that's the
could-
only time a person
could reliably do it.
not even could reliably, but could have the thought that this would be a worthwhile thing to
That's
do.
true.
And the resources to pull
And
it
the
off.
resources to try it.
Yeah, no one was cooking my food. I just had to show up. Be like, got food.
You show
handed
up
to me.
at somebody just slapped a chicken
Mhm.
breast into your hand. And
Amazing.
You're like, there's my dinner.
So I did do it. I did it for 14 days in total. The first 6 were something else. The first 2 I felt fine, of course, because whatever, just being.
Yeah, you
sleep
can do
deprived.
anything for 2 days.
And then on the 5th day, I was in one of my classes. I was taking notes, and the professor was talking. Usually, I just take notes, while they're chatting. And I could not remember. Like, I would start writing a sentence, and I could not remember what the other half of the sentence was. So it was just, I had nothing.
Memory is the first thing to go with sleep deprivation.
had no cognitive skills, basically at all.
So this was even though you were doing your 20-minute naps.
Because your body takes a while to adjust, was what they say. So I did it, and then about day 6 or 7, it seemed like it was actually working. So I was much more alert. I was writing papers and stuff. I was fine. But the weird thing
This is probably just the pre-death euphoria.
it may have been. The weird thing though was that the extra time, because the whole point of it is to get those extra 4 or 6 hours in a day. But like you said, the reality is that you increase the fragility basically of your entire system because every 4 hours you have to take, like when you do this 8-hour sleep thing, and we've all done it where you've had maybe one night where you sleep 10 hours and then you have another night where you sleep for 4 because maybe you're in New York City or whatever else.
Right.
But
So
you can-
that's every night, but yeah.
Right. But you can kind of recover from that because it's because it's just in that one big chunk. It's weirdly more flexible than doing these like every 4 hours things. And so
Right, because if you miss one, you miss
Yeah.
one 20-minute nap, or even if your 20-minute nap gets interrupted at 5 minutes in,
yeah.
it's over now.
So basically you have to plot out where you're going to nap because you're in places every 4. You'll be at work.
Yeah,
You'll be
your
in the
whole day
library.
now requires this extra layer of planning.
Yeah. So I started getting annoyed by it, but then the thing that really annoyed me was that the whole point was to get more time. But the reality is the time you get is the hours between like midnight and 6 a.m., right? Because otherwise you would have been up anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, there's nothing to do at that time aside from whatever solo projects you have. And the reality also is that you'll get tired of that real fucking
Yeah,
fast.
well, and what we know too is
Well,
that
and it ruins the part of the day where you can actually like talk to other people.
Yes.
Because you'll be in the middle of a conversation like, oh, should I go to
I had
nap
a
for
dinner.
20
I was
minutes?
at a dinner with like all of my favorite people, and then I was like, I need to go take a nap. Look, I gotta go miss 30 minutes of this because it takes me about 5 minutes to fall asleep. Like I need to go. I'll be back. And I was like, this is dumb. What am I doing? This is crazy,
man.
So I did it. I wouldn't recommend it. Also, I'm pretty sure it has some like really bad cognitive effects.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a terrible idea.
Yeah. All right. So I was listening to a Hidden Brain episode about sleep deprivation.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
The episode is called Eyes Wide Open. And it was about, starting in the 1950s, this radio DJ decided he was going to pull a publicity stunt and stay awake for 8 days and be on air the whole time.
Okay.
So this was just like to get press and stuff. This was at a time where
No one knows.
there was no real good knowledge about how
We still basically
we still basically know nothing, but we know
A lot more.
Something.
Well, so let me just back up on the science with the polyphasic thing. So the whole thing is girded in this idea that the one thing that we do know about sleep is that the most beneficial part comes from your REM cycle of like how your brain works.
Yeah.
Right?
We say that. We also used to think that most of your genome was junk.
Yes, exactly. So that's the thing. It's like, is that's the most beneficial part, quote unquote, based on what we know right now, which is probably a bunch of bullshit. So the whole thing is predicated on this very loose knowledge.
Yeah, it's like we talked about, I think it was last week, about the idea that if people say, oh, you only get 2 hours a day of real good work done.
Yeah, so just don't even do the other
So just don't even do the other ones. Well, maybe the other ones are what allow those 2 hours to happen. You know?
So anyways, back to the radio.
Yeah. So this guy puts himself into a glass room.
Oh, God. Okay.
In public so that he can be observed. I assume he had a private bathroom to pee in and stuff. But he was just, doing his radio show for 8 days. And, first day he was being all cocky. It's kind of like when somebody eats a hot pepper. He's like, this is fine. Like, of course, he's just been awake for 5 hours. So who cares?
Just a normal day so far.
And then by day 2, he's getting grumpy. Day 3, no filter. It's kind of like being drunk, just like no ability to kind of mediate his responses to anything. And then he's just incredibly irritable the rest of the time. He did make it to the end, but he was just a raging asshole by the time he got to the end of the 8 days.
I'm surprised he didn't die.
Well, then what happened was he did die. So then over the next 6 months, he lost his job, and his marriage fell apart, and he was fired because nobody could get along with him at work. Right. Whoa. And so like whatever. And then he ended up, he couldn't get any more jobs as radio DJ, and he couldn't get any jobs where he had to be around people generally. And he became like a door-to-door encyclopedia salesman or something. And that was just it for him. And a bunch of other DJs did the same thing and had basically the same outcome. And so basically what happened then was something over that 8-day period just like permanently broke. And they could no longer moderate their moods. And like, because when you're in social situations, you have this you have a filter and you've got a mask, and somebody's like, how's it going? You're like, fine. And you don't tell them like, well, I'm bleeding from my tooth that I exploded
this morning. Yeah.
Because it's not their problem, and who cares, and so maybe you're in line at the grocery store and the person in front of you is like, oh, I think I got a 5 somewhere. And then it's like 8 minutes later, they finally go, I'll just swipe my credit card. And you just deal with it, because that's just life. But if you just lose all capacity to handle these situations gracefully, just permanently, then your whole life is done.
Yeah, you can't exist socially at that point.
Yeah. And so the guy that they were interviewing was a guy who also did this when he was 17, and he set the world record. He saw what these DJs were doing, and he was like, I could beat that.
I assume they don't let you do that world record anymore because of how dangerous
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Guinness Book of World Records said we're scrubbing all records of sleep deprivation, and we're no longer recording it or supporting it. And they were like, you should understand that they allow you to do things like take a balloon up to space and jump out of it. And that's cool. Like that's the longest free fall record, and that is safe. But sleep deprivation is so horribly dangerous to you that they cannot support that activity whatsoever, right? So
who knows? Maybe I was a cheerful person before that polyphasic sleep experiment.
You're definitely a different person now.
There you go. I'm crankier. Got things.
I mean, but the thing is, like, it might not always have that sort of that exact negative impact either. Who knows? Because if the end result is that it changes your brain chemistry in some way permanently, then basically you just killed your former self and became someone else.
Sometimes you got what's the Kylo Ren quote?
Yeah.
You got to kill the past.
Yeah. So if you need to become a new self, you still shouldn't do it.
Don't do it
under any circumstances.
Always get plenty of sleep.
Yep.
All right. Our final question of the day comes from Anonymous. So thanks for the donation also. Hey, B-Bros, your stance on monetization is well documented. What's your take on games, particularly in the mobile arena, that are initially free to download but eventually hit you with a one-time premium price tag to access all the content? I can see how it would devalue an established brand, but is it the right way for a new developer to let players get a taste before coughing up money to people with no prior credibility? Or would one be better off establishing a premium price from the get-go?
probably if you're brand new, you'd be better off making a free-to-play game in some capacity.
Would you?
But
it depends on what you mean by better off. Because I think no matter what you do, you're probably going to make about the same amount of money, which is almost zero.
Yeah.
As a new entrant into the industry. Because if you make a free to play game, then yeah, you're going to get way more downloads. But nobody gives a fuck about free to play games. So if your game is stellar,
except for Fortnite.
But if your game is stellar, people really get into it, then, you know, maybe a tiny fraction of them, you know, around 1% will actually buy something from you, etc.
Well, I mean, there's lightweight ways to implement a free to play monetization that aren't that don't require you to know how to like do the whole storefront thing. So if you look at games like Crossy Road or whatever else, right, where it's a very simple overall schema where you just like pay some money to unlock some new characters, or you watch some ads. Like those are the two methods.
But the only reason that works is that the number of people who played Crossy Road was like 30 million, or whatever, right? And so when you have downloads at that scale, then any monetization scheme will work. If you're a small studio and you can move 30 million units, right? If you
would the game have worked as a premium game? Is the question.
Maybe because it was still kind of the first of its exact kind, but it probably wouldn't have worked as well because it's harder to convince somebody to part with money at the outset.
Yeah, I think it's a case that for a premium game or a full game unlock thing, you need to be offering a lot. Like you need to have something that's a really unique value proposition because what they're buying is the whole game, right? And so, and you even see that in Super Mario Run, for example, people didn't think it was enough. You know, they got the whole game for $10, but that wasn't enough. And with free to play games, you hardly need to offer anything at all. You're like, oh, here's some gems, and people are like, fuck yeah, here's $100, right?
Well, some people. A tiny number of people.
So other people are like, oh, okay, and here's $1 for my handful of gems.
Again, still a tiny.
And then in a game like Fortnite, what are you buying? You know, costumes.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't change anything directly about your game experience. It changes how you look.
It's a signal though because it's a multiplayer game. So
right. But what you got to
actually a huge incentive for those signifiers.
Yes, but what you got to recognize is that people. It makes me think of back when we launched Talify and we said, hey, it's only $3. It's cheaper than a cup of coffee at Starbucks, right? That's not the comparison point. You know, nobody's driving down the street and they see a Starbucks and they're like, should I go in there and get my daily coffee, or should I buy Talify 2, the Monocle of Destiny? That question has never been asked in the history of mankind, and it never will.
People also, if they're going and buying a cup of coffee, they don't ask like, well, this is like a fifth the cost of a video game, so maybe I should
forego coffee for the next week.
Yeah, or video games or whatever. Right? People compare when things are within the same market, right?
Yeah,
so
category.
Yeah, the same category. So they'll compare the cost of your game to other games, which on mobile they're all free, right?
Yes.
But they're not going to compare the cost of your game to a cup of coffee.
Yeah, but again, what you have to really think about is what's the real comparison point? Because if you're selling your game, then you are being compared to entire other free games. You're being compared to other games that have a demo and an unlock, as well as other entire pay up front games, right? So people are going to be, and specifically games that are also being featured alongside your game in that very moment, other sort of AAA titles that may be similar. You know, there's a fairly narrow comparison window, and yours has to be the best value proposition.
So being free isn't actually the thing that brings you more players, because you're now a free thing in a pool with a whole bunch of other free things.
Right.
So it's actually standing out amongst your direct competitors.
It's still the game.
Yeah. It's still the game. And I think that's the important note is I think it's actually a weird kind of a fallacy to just say like, should my game be premium or should it be? And of course the question in here is not, should I be selling in-app purchases? It's should I do the one-time unlock? But just to kind of like, clarify the thinking on this stuff is if you are selling a bunch of in-app purchases inside your game, that's a whole other thing. Because what you're actually doing there is you're creating a closed market, which is people are now evaluating the 100 gem pack versus the 10 gem pack and the prices of those things in its own ecosystem.
Instead of comparing your game to another game.
It's not about the game anymore. Right. Yeah, now it's about what's in the game.
But people got to be really into your game to give a shit at all about making those sorts of comparisons.
So I think this is a nuanced problem, which is that you can't know what exactly someone should do. So my reason for saying that going for free first is because if you're like a starting out independent developer, my sort of basis for that is always that our experience has been that our first games that we made were, of course, the worst ones that we ever made, by a long margin. And that what you're looking for there is just sort of the start of an audience, more so than actual giant return on revenue or on investment, right? So it really depends on what your goals are with the project. Like a very realistic look at a thing. Like if it's just another puzzle game, I mean, I wouldn't put a premium price tag on it personally, unless again it wasn't another one. It was some sort of news special thing that felt good and everyone liked. So it just depends on the game, almost 100%. That's what you should do.
But I think just realizing that it's not a silver bullet to give your game away for free, because the free market is saturated.
Yes.
And so nobody, like, the price tag is basically irrelevant when it comes to
the median number of downloads is 0.
Yeah, and most games are free to play, which means that most games get no downloads, even if they're free. Yeah. So that's not the ticket to, like, if I can only just get people in here, then I'll have it, right?
You still need an incredible value proposition, even though the cost is 0, right? Because it still needs to get featured, and people need to be able to find the game, and it needs to spread via.
Yeah, I think probably a lot of this depends on how you think the marketing for your game is going to work, right? Mm-hmm. Because when it comes to something like Crashlands, we talked about how much of a struggle it was to portray what the game is like, and that meant when we were trying to get people to understand what it was they were going to taking a risk with their money on, we just never really felt like we could do it, right? And so given that, that means that we know that we struggle when somebody visits the store and they're trying to decide, am I going to pay up front for this thing? We know that we struggle there from a marketing perspective because of what the game is. But making it free doesn't necessarily solve that, right? But if we thought for some reason that we'd be like, okay, well, we think that there's enough here that it might be too hard to sell directly, but it's enough here that we could get somebody in, right? Then in that case, maybe we would now reevaluate and say, okay, so if we fine tune everything about the storefront and so on, so that we make it seem like a great value proposition, and we just got to get people in there, then we can design some sort of an in-game unlock or store or whatever to actually get that thing to make some money somehow. But now you basically are confronted with problem number 2 for marketing.
Yes.
So you've now broken up your problem from one really hard marketing problem into 2. And the decision about that entry point, about how someone's going to get into the thing, has an enormous impact about how someone is going to approach your game. Because if they come into a free title, they're going to come in with a huge sense of entitlement, expecting a lot from you.
Because they've already got it now.
So
there's this endowment effect,
which
is the psychological effect that once somebody feels like they own something, they place a lot more inherent value on the thing.
Yeah. And you can use that to actually make money off of it if you do it cleverly. But because it can also just bite you.
Well, the reality of a paid unlock is actually what you're doing is you're paying someone to get back what they have.
Yeah, because they have the game.
According to their viewpoint. Right?
Yeah, so they have the game, and then there's that paywall term that people use, right? They have the game, and then they feel like you have put a wall up now that they have to pay to get past, and that if you hadn't done that injustice to them, then they would be able to just keep playing the rest of the game, and you took it away.
Yeah,
it's not that you gave them the first part for free.
Doesn't matter.
In their perspective, you took away the last part. That's where that kind of friction comes from. And I think it's a training problem as well, because most games don't do that, right? So games typically, I would say, fall into either the pay, now you're just playing the game, or the free to play with tons of things you can buy inside the game, but generally you can keep playing sort of on your own, either by waiting for energy systems to refill or just play and buy.
And the in-game purchases don't necessarily unlock access to gameplay experiences. They all just
accelerate things or whatever. And so there's this tiny, tiny sliver of games that do kind of like the Super Mario Run model that is just kind of confusing to people, I feel like, because they see the free tag on iTunes, which now I think it says get, on the App Store. You just get the game, but you don't really get the game. Right, because you get a little piece of the game, and then after you become attached to the game, it feels like the rest of it's been snatched away from you, and that actually can kind of backfire. And we did see that with Flop Rocket, which we did. We saw the same thing happen with Mario Run. That even though it's a great game, had like 3.5 stars.
Your reviews will get nuked.
Yeah, your reviews get tanked, and if your goal is to become known as a developer of high quality stuff, then you might want to consider those review scores. and go with models that are much more familiar to people and try to deliver really high quality kind of within that domain. So does that make sense?
Which I think
It's an impossible question without knowing what the game is. True.
It is, yeah. It depends on the game and how you think you can market it. But I think it is the case that the hardest thing to sell is the in-game unlock.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And I think we didn't believe that until we did it, and then we looked at the experience and then thought about it a lot more, and just realized that the psychology of that is so different than the psychology of the other two approaches, and it's just really hard not to get bit by doing that.
You're gonna be fighting people's natures on that one, which is not ideal.
Yeah, and I think in Flop Rocket, if we think about our options being, so we did the one-time unlock, which backfired on us. The game still did well enough.
It still made a good amount of money, but it wasn't
not compared to its number of downloads.
Exactly.
And so if we had done the premium, there's that point which is like, I don't think the game is big enough to sell for a couple bucks on its own. I don't think there's enough in there to warrant that. Because again, like if you're selling a premium game, people
have high expectations.
People expect a lot.
Yeah, they'll spend a lot more as an in-app purchase and expect way less.
Right.
Than they will for a premium purchase.
Right.
Like if they spend $2 on a premium purchase, they're expecting the equivalent of $100 in-game unlock, basically.
Yeah. Because in some cases, a couple dollars is a cup of coffee. Other times it's an entire game. And other times it's a pair of pants for your Fortnite game.
Right. Yeah. And but that whole point that Seth made earlier about once somebody is in the game, prices are now just constrained within that market that the game has created. And so those numbers just mean something completely different now. That's why games can sell $100 like coin packs. And anybody from outside this game can look at that and be like, why the fuck you could go buy any AAA game
and have $40 left over.
And have $40 left over. Why in God's name would you buy, $100 worth of coins in this puzzle game on mobile, right? And the answer is that because that's not the algebra people are doing. They are playing this game a lot. They're looking through the storefront and they're being like, oh, the best deal I can get because I save the most money because I get a better rate if I buy that $100 pack, right? That is the math that people are doing. And you have to really just be aware that that's what's going on in people's brains when you're trying to decide on a monetization model.
So that means we've talked about how we switched to this premium model after Crashlands. What that does mean is that the days of fast, short development cycles and small games for us are essentially over.
Yeah.
And we kind of realized this as we were getting, 6 months into Levelhead development, and we're like, we're going to sell this game. And even though we are 3 months past the point where we could have launched it for free and been fine, we are still really far away from the point where we could ask for a single dollar for somebody to buy this game.
Yeah.
Because they're just too.
Well, that totally threshold is a lot higher on everything but mobile too.
Yeah.
Although it's also getting higher on mobile.
Yeah. So if your question is, should I do a pay to unlock the full game or upfront purchase, maybe you should be asking, is my game big enough to sell? And if not, you might need to just go with the straight up in-app purchases, in-game store model. So, but again, we have no idea.
Shit's crazy.
Our opinion is very narrow in terms of our data sets that we're coming from. So who knows? Just do something and try to see if it works. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for this week. We'd like to thank our producer, Fat Bart, for making us sound good. Thanks to our community moderators who keep our Discord running. If you'd like to get more involved in the Butterscotch community, you can hop into our Discord server over at discord.gg/bscotch and come say hello. Also, if you'd like to adorn your body with Butterscotch merch, you can check out our shop over at shop.bscotch.net. And if you'd like to send us something, we have a mailbox, which you can find the address for over at mailbox.bscotch.net. We also have donations for people who would like to support the podcast. You can find that at moneygrab.bscotch.net. And last but not least, Shenanicon 2018. This is the last week to get tickets. And you can find that over at meet.bscotch.net. It's happening in 2 weekends. Woo! So get your Shenana pants on because it's happening.
We should probably make a Discord channel for the Shenanicon attendees.
We should over at discord.gg/bscotch.
Yeah, we should probably over there.
Yep. Cool. All right, thanks you all for listening. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.